NWA. Have you seen any of that? You know, they're trying to keep the traditions, aren't they? And I've enjoyed the way they've been doing it. I really have.
Yeah, I was working with Billy on. I have the library from the St. Louis Wrestling at the Chase tapes, and recently I just acquired Dick the Bruiser's TV library. And so back when Billy first was getting involved, he's been to St. Louis now 2 or 3 times, which I think he should be here more because St. Louis was the hub. And I think that was the first mistake he made by not coming to St. Louis right away. You know, I had tried to encourage him when he first come to St. Louis to bring some of the legends, the Dory Funk Jr.'s, the Baron Von Raschke, the Ted DiBiase's, people like that who helped build that foundation in St. Louis. Chose not to do that. So, again, we were trying to negotiate on the tapes that I've got. And but I know I wish him well. He's in a big fish, a pond there with big fish in it. And, I'm not so sure that he's not concentrating more on his music than the wrestling, which that's how he made his money and has made his fame as the music. Absolutely. He grew up as a wrestling fan. He'll tell you that. But, you've got to concentrate on this business because there's a lot of guys out there that will try to sneak in the back door on you. And all I've done is stayed within my footprint for all these years. We used to travel from the Boot Hills of Missouri up to Indianapolis where Dick the Bruiser ran. That was kind of our footprint, and we protected it back then the best we could. If another promotion came in, you may run there this time, but we'd come in there with Jerry Blackwell, Nick Murdoch, Greg Valentine, people like that. There was nobody to compete with what the talent we were bringing in. And some would say, well, we were just throwing our weight around. Well, call it what you want. We call it doing business, the same way. I mean, we don't have the advantage of Pepsi-Cola against Coca-Cola. They're sold in the same stores, and that 2 wrestling organizations working in the same town is hard. Somebody's going to lose. The strong will survive.
I love hearing about the, obviously the territories predated me, and obviously we didn't get them in the UK. To the best of my knowledge, it wasn't covered. It was obviously when Vince went international and all that. It was in probably the mid to late 80s when WWF started here, but it's a treasure trove to me. I was only telling Tommy Rich last week. I just love going back. I've got a Google Drive with all territory content on it. I love it, Herb. I love going back to the territories and watching what you guys were doing.
Well, and the territories work because you take a guy like a Tommy Rich. I could work him in St. Louis for 6, 7, 8 months and make money with him. And then when his sex appeal or whatever was starting to die down a little bit, then you could call a Fritz von Erich, or you could call a Jim Crockett or a Stu Hart and say, hey, I've had this guy for 6, 7 months. Can we? And then you send him to their territory. And that's what they did. They worked the country, they worked the world basically. But, and now that's all kind of died out because we know Vince come in and basically bought everybody up and everybody sold out. But that's kind of what I do here. I've got a promotion in Southern Missouri, New Breed Wrestling, and I've got ACW, American Championship Wrestling. So, and then Troy Peterson's up in North. So there's 3 or 4 of us that will exchange boys back and forth, which is good for the boys.
Absolutely.
And guess what? It's good for the fans to see those new faces.
Absolutely.
So it works. It's just that the key to making it work bigger is promoters that think outside of the box. And they got to start thinking about, hey, if I can bring in that big guy Herb's got called Attila Khan, who is the meanest, biggest, baddest guy in the business, and we're watching him on TV on Sunday nights, why don't I bring him to my town and I start making him the big bad guy? But they don't think about that. They think in that small window instead of looking at the broader picture. It's good. Because it helps me, because it helps my guy get more work. He goes there for 5, 6 months. Guess where he's going to come back to? He's going to come back to me. because at that time I can build another storyline. And then all of a sudden, one day he comes out from the curtain. He's been gone for 6 months or a year. Now we start a whole new run over with him.
Keeping the traditions of booking alive. Absolutely. The old school traditions.
It's called Booking 101.
I couldn't book. I'd be useless. I know I would, but yeah, at least that's why you guys were put in place in the business, and fantastic. Just using your brains to do to entertain us fans. At the end of the day, that's what you were doing. So, thank you, Herb.
I got some of these young promoters that just think I'm an old dinosaur that don't know anything, and it's okay. I'll sit and talk with guys like you all day long that appreciate the business and then understand the business from your perspective. I mean, I'd be willing to bet just what we're talking about today, you've picked up a little knowledge of what I've talked about Booking 101.
Of course. I always do. And yeah, absolutely. I have. Absolutely. I'm a sponge with these things.
And what we do is we book backwards. That's old school booking. In other words, this is January, the end of January. So my booker and I have a crystal ball. And we know what that crystal ball is telling us for the end of the year. Who's going to be the champion? Who's going to do this? And then we book backwards to get back to where we are now. Now, if there's some caveats there, well, what if that person gets hurt? What if this happens? Well, you always got to have a plan B, in which we do. But that's the way Sam did it forever. He booked backwards. And if you go back and just watch the tapes, you can see how things just build, like that storyline, that soap opera. And it's so methodically done if you stop and think about it. That's the greatest part, is the booking and writing the TV, because you get to see it all unfold eventually when it all comes together in that package.
How was Stu Hart? I'm a big fan. Brett is still my favorite of all time. Got to meet him eventually. How was Stu Hart? Because I've heard so many stories about him.
Stu was great. Him and Sam Muchnick had a great relationship together. I remember sitting in the office on different times. I'd go over with Larry. Larry didn't have a driver's license, and his dad would have to drive us over there. And, Larry would sweep the floor or take the trash out, whatever Sam wanted done. And I'd tag along several times, but I got the opportunity to sit there and hear Sam and Stu talk on the telephone, or Stu be in the office periodically when he'd be in town, when he'd come into the St. Louis area. Same way with Fritz von Erich. I walked in one day and there's Fritz von Erich sitting in the office. And I'm thinking, holy kid, I'm a kid in a candy shop. Or you walk in and there'd be Big Thunder, Gene Kaniski.
Wow.
And Sam always told us, he said, look, whatever you hear or see in this office stays in this office. And he had all the file cabinets there. I've got all the records now. I've got every match that ever took place in St. Louis, the win-loss records of everybody, along with the TV tapings. So he'd say, you can look at anything in the files you want, but they stay in this office. And of course, when he passed away, Larry got them. And then when Larry passed away, they was given to me.
Just incredible.
Have you seen the book, the latest book that was done called Wrestling at the Chase by
no,
author?
I've got to be honest with you. No, I haven't.
It's his publisher, the author, Ed Wheatley, a gentleman from St. Louis, his author called me a couple of years ago and said, hey, would you be interested in helping my writer work on a book called Wrestling at the Chase? And I said, no, I've already helped do that with Larry Matisek about 17 years ago. And he said, no, would you at least listen to what Ed's got to say? So I set up a meeting. Ed came over. He wanted to see all the stuff that I have. So I had things laid out, not all of it, but I had a good amount of all the programs. I got every program from Wrestling at the Chase that was ever printed, dating back to the 30s. And he walked in the door, and he was a kid at the candy shop. He said, oh, wait a minute. Because what he wanted to do was what they call a coffee table book full of pictures and little vignettes. So he explained to me what he wanted to do. So I loved the concept, because Larry and I had always talked about doing that, because I've got a large collection. And so he started to work on this book. and he got the book done, and it's called Wrestling at the Chase, and it's got the picture of Bruiser Brody and Dick the Bruiser on the front of it. And so, if you could ever get that, you ought to pick that up. It's really great. But then that book, we came up with the idea to do a documentary on Wrestling at the Chase called Head Over Heels, and it was on what's called PBS Channel 9 here in the States, and it got nominated for an Emmy this last year, and it told the story of St. Louis wrestling, everything. It's got our SICW Training Academy in it. I'm in it as far as telling some stories. But if you can ever pick that up, it's on PBS Channel 9, public access channel.
I'd love to watch anything within, history of the business, Herb. I'm all for it, honestly. Yeah. I love documentary based stuff. I'm a bit skeptical with Iron Claw, and we're gonna get that in the cinema in February. It's coming here. I will go and see it, but I've heard mixed. It's like any time. It's like any time.
I've not seen it yet, and I bet you I've had 500 people text me or call me and ask me what I thought about it. I said I haven't seen it yet because I'm a critic when it comes to things like that. Just from what I've heard from fans that have went and seen it, they say it's great, but then they say, well, but then this happened. Like the actor that portrayed Harley Race is doing all of his punching with his right hand, while Harley was a southpaw. So if I'd be sitting in the theater and see that happen, and I'd be the one standing up saying, wait a minute, Harley didn't do a right hand in his life, things like that, and then them not doing the part on Chris.
No, it's crazy to me.
Yeah,
I've heard this.
But again, I think what we have to keep in mind, Stu, that wasn't a documentary.
No,
that was a film.
It was adapted for film, which Hollywood and how they do things. It's not just, it's any film, isn't it? But we're going to be more, because we're so in love with wrestling, we are going to see things that we're going to,
I'll eventually see it. But again, like I said, people have told me, I had one lady that's not a real wrestling fan. She went with her brother and husband, and she said it brought tears to my eyes. She said, because, just what little bit I do, she said, but it was very touching. And so, but I will see it. And then I'll come up with my own theories on it. But
I did like what Zac Efron said. Obviously, he plays Kevin, doesn't he? Just saying the respect he has for the guys. Obviously, with Chavo training them all prior, he was very complimentary about what our guys have to do, what they put their bodies through. It's always nice,
right?
He when you hear positives from an actor when they've trained wrestling and learned about wrestling.
Yeah. Well, and the one referee that played himself in there, James Beard's a great friend of mine. I love him to death, and he'll be with us at the May Fan Fest. He was there at Fan Fest 1, and James Beard, he grew up around the Von Erichs, refereed for him, did a lot of work there. So I'm curious to hear his version of it because he was in it, and James will be the one who will tell me the real skivvy on it. What he really thought about it. So I can't wait to get him in here and hear about it.
Amazing.
He's somebody you ought to bring on the show one day.
Honestly, anybody, referees, yeah, absolutely. Just getting every facet of the business. You get so much. It's just, he'd be brilliant. He'd be brilliant. Just his, and everyone, years of service, Herb. It's guys that have lived and breathed the business. And I've got such a respect for you all. I really, truly have,
Well, and like I said, while other people are watching football, baseball, boxing, whatever, my life has always been professional wrestling. It was my mom and I's favorite thing to do on a Wednesday night, and then it moved to a Saturday and a Sunday. But back then it wasn't oversaturated like it is now. Mm-hmm. You, man, I tell you what, you thrive for that one night a week for it to come on. But now any day of the week you can turn on with all the access channels. You can get it during the daytime if you want. And I think that's what's happened. We've oversaturated it. And of course, as we say, the toothpaste is out of the tube. And, but still in all wrestling is, Sam Muchnick always said it was like a roller coaster. And wrestling right now is it's at the top of that roller coaster ride. And I guarantee you, the bottom is going to fall down again. It always does. It has. If you go back in history, you will see that roller coaster that Sam talked about. whether it because of the depression or whether it because of whatever, it's going to happen. Look at what's going on with WWE now, Vince, and now with the sellout. Now Vince has resigned again. You've got the AEW. You got people who are saying they're hanging on by a thread. I don't care about all that because I can't control that. That's their thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I care about is keeping old school wrestling alive. And none of them are doing that. When Ring of Honor first came back, we're going to be old school wrestling. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And what's the first thing they do? They come back with an 8-sided ring. Well, that's not old school wrestling. What we're doing is old school wrestling. We're telling storylines. When I have fans, and I stand at the door when people are leaving at night after a show, and we're telling me, hey, Herb, just when we thought we had it figured out, you pull a rabbit out of the hat. That's when you got the fans bought into what the product you're using. And then they're texting me and saying, hey, have you considered this? Hey, what about this? That I've always said, you have two types of fans. You have a wrestler's fan and you have a wrestling fan. And some of the people will say, what do you mean? I said, the wrestler's fan is the people who come to watch their family member or a friend of a wrestler. But the wrestling fan is the ones that come there and they are bought into what you are doing. They're not sitting there on their telephone talking to somebody sitting next to them. If they got their phones out, they're taking pictures, which we allow them to do. I mean, by the time I get through at a show on about 10:30 on a Saturday night, I'm up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock Sunday morning of people sending me pictures they taken. Then I post them. I'm more active on social media than anybody because I said until they start charging me, I'm going to use it. Why not? So I am very social supportive, and that's how you get the word out to your people. Even the older generation are following us on social media. Our Sunday night show, people's watching that, and then they're sharing it on their list. So that's how we get that word out.
It's crazy how it's gone, isn't it? It's so different. It's as you say, yeah. The whole Vince thing, it did make me laugh, Herb. They announced the Netflix deal, and then it all came out the woodwork, didn't it? The following day, the day after, it's like, right, we'll get the big news out, knowing full well that man once again, it was of no surprise to anybody, was it? Because we've seen it before. We've seen speculation.
Right.
People have been paid off. It was just typical, really. A big deal with Netflix, billions of dollars, and then they throw that one in.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what I watch a lot of podcasts, or I at least tune into a lot of them because I get invited to. And what gets me is how some of the hosts get so aggravated over what stuff like that. Well, it's business, it's wrestling. Don't get so upset about it. You can't do nothing about it. Talk about what's going on locally. That's what you want to hear. What's going on with WWE and AEW? That doesn't mean anything. I guarantee you more people are concerned what your local wrestling show is doing than they are that mainstream. They can go to a local show for a few dollars. If they go to one of the big shows, you don't get in the door for under $100 for a couple of people. And then you haven't even bought concessions. And if you take the kids along, you got to buy another $200 worth of merchandise. So if you come to these local shows that you should be promoting to more of, that's where your fans are. Because the big shows only come in town maybe once every 2 years. Like here in St. Louis, So that's why the independents are so popular in our area, because, the big shows only come here about once or twice.
It's great for you guys, though, isn't it? In the same token, you've still got that core group of fans, but it's getting ridiculous how much they're charging now. The big companies. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars for ringside, and at the end of the day, they're making massive money through the broadcasters and the sponsorship deals. Why hit the fans? Why hit the fans, Herb? We pay the wages as well, but
right.
The families can't come, like you're saying. It was all about. When they'd come to the UK, when I used to go to the big shows over here, you could afford to do it. It was affordable. I just don't understand it. They make billions out of broadcasters, and the fans are getting hit for it. It's not about the ticket sales as such now for the big companies.
Well, and that's what I've told some fans, because I've got a few that will drop, like you said, a lot of money to go to the bigger show when they come to town. And then they'll say, oh, you raised your ticket price when you brought a legend in. Well, yeah, because I got to buy airplane tickets. I got to pay them. They don't come in for free. I said, so yeah, I gotta cover it somehow, but I don't do it all the time, But remember when you just went over there 2 weeks ago and saw the WWE or whatever it is, and you paid $100 for a ticket, and I guarantee you the quality of show you saw there is subpar. It's not like it used to be, because if you see the first match is the same thing you see the rest of the night, like fish out of water. All the 2 seconds, 3 seconds high spots, no storytelling, nobody doing any chain wrestling. It's all who can jump the highest. So it doesn't mean anything. If you see the first match, you can get up and go and say, I've seen everything, but you'll go and pay $100 for that. But then you want to complain when I'm charging you an $18 ticket because I'm bringing you a legend in. So where's the logic here?
This is it.
We can't do it for nothing. That's the thing.
This is,
and again, we've kept our prices very affordable. You got to pay rent, you got to pay insurance, you got to pay the talent. Some of these organizations don't pay their talent. There's an old saying over here, come on in and wrestle for a handshake and a hot dog.
Yep.
Well, that's a true statement. I know organizations that's done that. That's never been done with us. Everybody who ever's worked for me has always got paid, and they will always get paid, unless it's a fundraiser that we're doing
yes,
for the boys or something like that. Then people, and we've done that only a couple of times, where they've donated their time, and then all that money has went to that cause. But otherwise, if you work a show, you get paid. Yeah, that's what it's got to be.
No, it's just like you say. Everything's gone up. Everything's gone up, hasn't it? I'm having. I will say. I did say to you when I messaged yesterday. I've had guys asking for money to come on the podcast.
Yeah,
and it's like, whoa. And I didn't get into an argument with the person, but
no.
When you get Tommy Rich coming on for nothing, everything he's done in the business, Tony Garea, not a problem. No mention of money. This guy, he could potentially get booked in the UK, being on my show.
Sure.
I couldn't believe it, Herb. I couldn't believe that the goal of the person. I didn't even reply to the message.
No. And we're faced with some of that. And some of these guys, they do it for two reasons. One, they really need the money, or they don't want to do it anyway. And I'm faced with some things when I try to book some of the guys. Of course, I know who to book and who not to book. I mean, there's guys out there that are just pricing themselves out of these public appearances because, one, they don't want to travel no more. The airports are making it so hard for these guys that are up in age. I mean, hell, I hate going through the airports, but I understand the safety. But some of these guys said, hey, I can just sit at home and do my thing. It's a little different on a podcast. To me, they should want to do that. They can sit there, turn their computer on, and sit there and talk all day about the business. Because I guarantee you, there's not a one of them that's, if they're worth their weight in gold, that hasn't got enough, just like we're doing today. We could sit here, and I literally could sit here and talk to you all day about the business. These guys that have been out there for 20 plus years in the ring working, have got thousands of stories they can tell, and it would make them feel good. But some of them want to sit there and I understand if they say, well, I want to go on there because they're making money on my stories. No, you guys don't make money on these podcasts. When you stop and think about the time you put in it, there is no money. If you cover your expense, you're lucky. So I understand business when it comes to that.
I didn't want to lift the lid there, but I felt the need to bring that up. Obviously, I would never state the name of the person, like I say, out of respect here. But it annoyed me, and I would never. This show's never been about that, me getting irate and stuff like that. I enjoyed doing it, but I was aghast. I was aghast when he propositioned that. I was like, whoa.
Well, and like I said, that's some of the guys that I call. and I know right away if they don't want to come because their price will go through the roof. And I just say, okay, I'll see you next time. I'm not going to beg you. If you don't want to come, that's up to you. But I don't get that a lot because most of the guys that I try to deal with, they're still able to get out and do things. And they want to come and get around the boys and they want to tell their stories. And like last May, I got a photo of Haku, JBL, Jerry Briscoe, people like that all sitting out in the hallway, and they're having a hell of a time, having some drinks. And, and I basically, the fans left them alone. They were just there in their own little world, like they get to do periodically at these things. But it was just good to see them doing that, They're still able to do it. But I know there are some out there that if I call and their prices, well, I said, wait a minute, when I booked you last time, this is what I paid you. Well, the cost of this, the cost of that, I understand my cost is there also. So this is if we can't reach it, and Brody taught me that years ago, how to negotiate with these guys. So again, it doesn't make or break the show, So if I don't bring you in, I'm still having the show. It's just that I was adding this for the boys in the locker room and for the fans. You're going to come in and sell your goods. Whatever I'm going to pay you, you're going to make more money by selling your books, your gimmicks. So it's a win-win for you. I'm taking all the risk. I'm paying the airfare.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Yeah. It's on your head first.
Sure. And I enjoy it. I enjoy each and every one of them. If somebody said, tell me who the worst guy you've ever had to deal with, I couldn't name anybody because they've all been great.
Mm-hmm.
Sam taught me, it told me years ago, if you treat the boys right, they'll treat you right. And for 51 years, he's been right about that. Mm-hmm. He also told Larry and I, he said, you keep these open and this shut, you'll go a long way in this business. 51 years I've done that unless I've had to. And I tell guys, don't take kindness as weakness. I'm an easy teddy bear, but if you get me upset, I'll come out of my cave and then you'll see the Sam Muchnick in me.
It served you well, that advice, Herb. Served you well, absolutely. Herb, I think we'll just promote, obviously, the show on February 9th. I'll get the date correct. And then we'll go into 4 months' time. Well, just under 4 months' time in May. But I'll put the SICW show up first for you.
Yeah,
so,
that's
just
February
give that a
the 9th.
Promotion before we leave. Yeah,
the real story on down there, you see the Busch Bavarian advertisement sign in the corner. The story about that, back when Wrestling at the Chase started back in 1959, they were the sponsor of Wrestling at the Chase. And to this day, they make our posters and that for us. So kind of his story there, history. They're still promoting wrestling in the St. Louis area, Anheuser-Busch. It's called Gray Eagles now, but that's the logo they use, Busch Bavarian beer. So kind of nice, but that's the big show on February the 9th at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds. And remember, it's a Friday night this time because of booking problems at the you'll see at the top there, it's called Friday Night Wrestling, and that's what it used to be at the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis. So big double main event, tag team on the line, no disqualification. The Top Guns, this is their last chance to get the LA Hustlers with Lucky P. Larson, Esquire. And of course, Stephen E., the man who wants to buy SICW, says he's not going to quit until he gets it. Stephen E., it's got one half of the Devastation Incorporated, Big Peyton Ayers going against the classic champion, the Big Texan. And if you think Stan Hansen used to deliver a lariat, the Texans got one just about as tough. And of course, the special guest referees, the first ever SICW champion, Danny Boy Hawkins, and he's there to call law and order right down the middle.
A fantastic night on February 9th, on Friday, February the 9th there. Herb, thank you for promoting that one. And then moving on into May, not that long away at all, we have got Fan Fest 2 in St. Louis. And just promote away, please.
Dr. D. David Schultz, the slap that was heard around the world, is going to be there. Great friend. Talk to him all the time. Jumping Jim Brunzell, B. Brian Blair, Greg Gagne, the Glow Girls, Tokyo Monster, Mr. Bill Apter, Coco Beware, Dr. Tom Pritchard, the Godfather, Dan Severin. Dan the B. Severin's going to be there. Haku. Can't have a fan fest without Haku. Tommy Rich, James Beard, Barbara Goodish, Tito Santana, and one of my, I say they're all my favorites, but the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant. This guy's about 81 years old and he's still getting out there doing it. So I'm looking forward to him. The Rock and Roll Express, Sergeant Slaughter, Abdullah the Butcher, Tim Storm from the NWA.
I had Tim Storm on about 4 years ago. Great, fantastic.
Great guy.
Fantastic he was on. Sorry, Herb, I jumped in then.
That's okay, no problem. And again, we're still 4 months away, and I'm working with some of the other vendors like GT Collectibles, Scott Wilder Promotion. They're going to bring in a few more guys, it looks like. So I suspect we'll be over 60 legends and superstars in guest when it's all said and done.
An absolute treasure trove for a fan to go to that. That's just that would cost me thousands of dollars because there'd be so many I'd want to meet. Honestly,
yeah. And it's real easy. You can go online, www.sicw.org. You can see the packages that are available. I think you'll find that they've been kept real reasonable for you. And you can either say, hey, I want to come just to the Bill Apter show Friday night, or if you want to buy the whole package, which includes Bill Apter, which includes the Hall of Fame, which includes the Fan Fest and the wrestling show. It's all real economical. Or if you want to just come to the Hall of Fame and the wrestling show. So they're all listed on there. So we've made it pretty simple to find out. And I really encourage you to buy them early, because what that really does is helps you get in the building quicker that morning, and you don't have to stand in line.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see photos from that as well, Herb. The fans, the wrestlers, yourself, just having a good time.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say I really appreciate you inviting me on. Like I said early on, I follow you as much as I can when I have time, and you're really helping keep the history and legacy of professional wrestling alive, and you do a great job at that. I'm
trying to get the balance right with this show, Herb. Getting the new guys on, but also the traditions of the business, because I want people to learn from you guys as well. These younger guys, but it's been fantastic having all you guys on. And thank you for sparing the time as well. I know you're busy, so I appreciate, because time is precious, isn't it, Herb? Oh, well, no problem. And like I said, these young guys need to understand that they're building on the foundation that the legends built. They need to take advantage of that. So when you bring the younger guys on, they just need to understand that they're here because of what the legends have actually built for them. I had a question, actually. It's just jogged my memory. Was there ever a guy that you felt should have been a bigger star, that had all the tools, everything, but it didn't quite happen for him? I know that's a bit of a question there. Was there ever anyone there that you felt could have been bigger than they were? Because I know you've seen so many. There's people like Tommy Rich. Tommy Rich, even though he, held the NWA title for a short time, he was a guy, I think, that for whatever reasons could have got a bigger push. But again, that was politics in the business back then. But yeah, there were several of the guys out there that should have got a bigger push in their career, but because they didn't know this person or that person, but yeah, there's quite a few of them that I would like to see got that push later on. I mean, Stan Hansen here in the States could have got a bigger push. Mm-hmm. Now you go over in Japan, and he was a god. He came over here. He was up in the AWA quite a bit with Vern Gagne until that whole ordeal took place, and he ran over the belt and sent it back to him. So, but yeah, there was guys like that, but for the most part of it, promoters got to do what they got to do. There were slime ball promoters out there. There's no doubt about it. There was so much talent as well, though, wasn't there, Herb? To have a piece of the pie and have that TV time, it was also hard, wasn't it? Because there's so many guys who were capable of being the top dog. Well, and you bring up about the pie, and that's another thing that Sam used to do as the peacekeeper. That's what we called him. Because when these other promoters would call, and because he controlled that NWA belt,
And when somebody called and had an axe to grind, oh, we want so and so here, it was like when Buddy Rogers had the belt and he was trying to avoid giving it up. You know, all that political stuff goes on. But Sam always said, he said, it's like a piece of a pie. He said, we're going to cut it up and everybody's going to get a sliver of it. And when everybody gets their piece of it, whatever's left, we're going to equally divide that up too. I'm not going to take all that, what's left over. That's the kind of guy he was. And everybody respected him for that. If you talk to anybody who came through St. Louis, they'll tell you Sam Muchnick was the best payoff guy in the world, and he was the most honest promoter. And then people like Paul Bosch in Houston, another great promoter. But there were a lot of other promoters out there that, boy, you better, when you walk in the room, you better keep your hands in your pockets. That's right. And then I used to get the Brody, my dear friend, he'd always say that when they'd interview him, when he would be somewhere, they'd be talking about things that come up. Well, this promotion that you work for, he'd always say, well, as far as I'm concerned, there's only two promoters in the world you can trust, and that's Sam Muchnick and Herb Simmons. And I always appreciated that. Amazing. Now, some people say that was a work, but they don't know the relationship I had with
Of course. Yeah, that's we know that's a matter of fact. Definitely you saying that. There's no question of that. There's no question. Herb, thank you so much for being my guest for episode 169 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast. We're getting ever closer to 200 here, Herb. You know, I was thinking about this. I was like, I'm on the precipice. I'm nearly at 200. But yeah, thank you for sharing just some of the stories. I could have you on for 10 hours, I think, and we still would merely be scratching the surface. So it'd be great to get you back on again at some point.
Anytime you let me know, maybe when you reach your 200 mark, you do a special and you bring us back on, and we'll have a longer conversation.
My guest, veteran pro wrestling promoter, a man who's been in the business 51 years when we get to February. It's been Herb Simmons all the way there from Illinois. And yeah, just fantastic and great insight, the history of the business, and just fantastic. Thank you for all your years in the business for us fans and for yourself, because you've enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to give a shout out to all your fans that follow you, because, that's what makes your podcasts stand out, is the fans that follow you. Any of these podcasts, without fans, you'd just be sitting there talking to yourself, and you got to have fans to really appreciate the job that you do. And you do a great job at it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on.
Thank you, Herb. It's been my pleasure. It truly has. So yeah, as I said, my guest, veteran pro wrestling promoter, Herb Simmons, has been my guest for episode 169. We will be back with 170 very, very soon. I've got some guests waiting to come on. And yeah, in the next month or so, we'll be hitting a few more episodes. But thank you again to Herb. And I'll see you all very, very soon for episode 170 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast.